The Fab Four was the best PR story the monarchy had in decades. 4 young royals, 1 united front. Enough collective glamour to make the tabloids forget every bad headline that had come before them. But Kate Middleton's face kept leaking the real story. Welcome to the Star Report, where we've pulled every one of those moments that the press release couldn't. The lip gloss grimace.
Mentioned that she'd forgotten her lip gloss and she asked Kate if she could borrow some of hers, and Harry used the term grimaced, as in Kate grimaced in response and handed it over, but it was just a very awkward moment before they then went out on stage.
Those disagreements were clearly far more ferocious behind the scenes than we could ever have imagined as they sat there welcoming Meghan into the foundation for the first time.
Before a single camera clicked in the room, it was already over. This was the Royal Foundation Forum, February 2018. Meghan was about to make her official debut alongside the royals as Harry's fiancée. They were backstage, cameras were waiting, and Meghan mentioned she'd forgotten her lip gloss, so she asked Kate if she could borrow some of hers. Harry described what happened next in spare. Kate was taken aback. She eventually found some, and when Meghan squeezed it out of the tube, Kate grimaced. Not a polite hesitation, not a freeze, a grimace, over lip gloss. Now Harry used the word grimaced himself and then immediately filed it under small clash of styles. He also blamed the media for making it bigger. But here's what the grimace actually was. Kate's body voted before her diplomacy could intervene. She hadn't been asked to borrow money or share a secret. She'd been asked for lip gloss by someone she'd known for a matter of months, and the reflex response was visible discomfort. That's not a sob story. That's a "this is already not working" story. And in about 3 minutes, Kate was going to have to sit next to this woman on a stage, smile into a bank of cameras, and perform the warmth that the institution needed the world to see. The lip gloss tube went back into Kate's bag. The grimace didn't. And the cameras inside that room were about to catch something almost as telling on that stage. The guarded one.
Look at the body language here. In the first of our Reading the Royals episodes, we talked about the relationship between William and Harry. But it's even more interesting to look at the relationship between Meghan and Catherine. To me, when I look at this picture, they all look quite awkward. Particularly William and Harry with those expressions. You can almost see them biting their lips. But the only one who seems to be absolutely delighted to be there is Meghan. She looks pleased as punch with that expression. And I think it looks like she really did feel, this is my moment, I'm joining the firm, and I'm going to be the boss. The pictures people would have seen online and in the following day's newspapers would have been positive. The Mail pointed out that all eyes were on the pair, sitting centre stage and smiling constantly. Catherine, who was by this stage heavily pregnant with Prince Louis, smiled and clapped when Meghan was introduced by William. But the mood was nervous and slightly tense, with none of them really looking like they wanted to be there.
Meghan walked onto that stage and owned it. She wasn't nervous. She didn't pause to collect herself or look for the right thing to say. When she spoke about gender equality and the Me Too movement and Time's Up, it came out fluent and rehearsed and completely at ease. She looked, in the journalist's words, pleased as punch, like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Kate was heavily pregnant with Prince Louis. She smiled. She clapped when William introduced Meghan. She did exactly what protocol required, except her face had that very specific tension that comes from doing a thing you don't want to do, surrounded by people watching to see how you do it. One royal correspondent who was in the room that day described it plainly years later. Meghan had such ease and such presence on the stage, and watching her command it would have been quite difficult for Catherine, who was far more guarded in her approach. That's a generous framing. What it actually described was Kate sitting there, 9 months pregnant, applauding a woman who'd made her grimace backstage 30 minutes ago, while that woman fielded questions about feminism without a single second of hesitation. William himself delivered what observers read as a loaded line in his speech. The task for the foundation, he said, would not be to reinvent the wheel. Nobody confirmed who that was aimed at. Nobody had to. The forum wrapped. The photographs ran in the papers the next morning. The coverage called them glamorous and unified, and Meghan walked out looking exactly like someone who'd just shown everyone what she was there to do. The cracks that were already forming didn't make it into the photos, but the wedding was coming, and Kate's face at that one wasn't going to give the press anything to work with. The wedding face.
What should have been a very happy family occasion for all was anything but for Catherine. There she is holding the hand of Princess Charlotte, who was one of the flower girls. And remember that Catherine had given birth, so being on public display and so much in the spotlight, would have been stressful. And also William was acting as best man, so, he wasn't there. She was very much on her own, looking after the children. Look at Catherine's face. She's almost unrecognisable from the, relaxed, happy Catherine we know.
This is the photograph most royal commentators said they had to look at twice, because the woman standing at Harry and Meghan's wedding, holding Princess Charlotte's hand by the chapel doors, looked nothing like the Kate the world knew. Not bad lighting, not an unflattering angle, completely unrecognizable from the relaxed, warm, composed version of Catherine the public had spent years watching. The context, once you layer it in, explains everything. Kate had recently given birth to Prince Louis. William was serving as best man, which meant she was managing 3 small children alone, in full public view, at a globally televised event, while the entire world's press corps pointed cameras directly at her face, hunting for any sign of the feud that had been circulating for months. And all of that was on top of the bridesmaid dress situation. The row over Princess Charlotte's outfit had made the rounds in various versions. Meghan said Kate cried. Other accounts said Meghan cried. Harry's version painted Kate as inflexible. Tom Bower's book described Kate as already exhausted and crossed with Meghan over her treatment of staff. The accounts contradicted each other so completely that the only universally agreed upon detail was that something had happened, and it was bad enough that Kate had eventually shown up with a bunch of flowers trying to patch it. The flowers patched nothing. They papered. There's a photograph from later in that wedding where William and Kate were both turned toward each other in conversation, rather than watching the ceremony. King Charles was chatting with Doria. The guests around them were talking among themselves. The observation landed quietly. You can only wonder why it was that Catherine didn't want to look at the happy couple that day. But we didn't have to wonder for very long. If the wedding was Kate barely holding the surface together, what came next was Kate running out of reasons to keep trying. The second row.
Whereas she may have been hoping for a, leading role, here it was clear that she'd be playing a secondary role. She'd have to be standing behind Catherine. And she does look quite awkward in that position. Look at their expressions. They look as if they're trying to look away from each other. They look uncomfortable in each other's presence, frankly. Meghan peering out from behind an uncomfortable-looking Catherine did seem to sort of set the tone for their relationship in future. Despite the very difficult start to their relationship.
Trooping the color should have been simple. Meghan was new. She was still learning the institution. Standing one row behind the future king and queen wasn't a snub, it was protocol. Every senior royal understood the hierarchy. It wasn't personal, except Meghan's face said she did not enjoy this lesson. And Kate's face said she was completely aware of that. The image that got remembered was described as Meghan peering out from behind an uncomfortable-looking Catherine. Both women trying to look somewhere other than at each other. Both positioned close enough that the cameras caught the effort it was costing them to maintain the performance. This dynamic seemed to set the tone for their relationship. What's worth noticing is that this wasn't an explosive moment. There was no scene, no confrontation, just 2 women standing near each other in a formal setting, angled slightly away, manufacturing the appearance of coexistence through what looked like concentrated effort. The institution had its own opinions about the hierarchy. William and Kate at the front, Harry and Meghan behind. And this formation kept reappearing. Different events, different venues, same photograph, same position, same expression on the faces of both women when they realized they were going to have to stand like this for the foreseeable future. Kate tried to shift the dynamic that summer. She extended something that took effort to extend. The handbag footage from that attempt is something else, the happy place.
I think you can, however, see in here the strain on their faces. It doesn't look really like they were having a relaxed afternoon watching the tennis together. Catherine's expression, it's far from that. Usually when you see her watching the tennis, she'll be looking totally relaxed. It's her sort of happy place. Whereas here, she looks strained, as if she's making the effort. She knows she's going to be photographed, but she doesn't seem to be enjoying being there with Meghan at all. In his book, Revenge, Tom Bower writes, Meghan's smile looked more forced than usual. The physical comparison was unflattering to Meghan. On her own, Meghan's radiance won universal applause, but beside the taller, authoritative future queen, the Duchess appeared diminished. Neither could conceal their mutual discomfort. Bauer also points out that despite this show of friendship, it was an unhappy summer for the two couples.
Wimbledon is Kate's event. She's patron of the All England Club. She's been going for years. The cameras regularly find her grinning during a close match, completely loose, genuinely happy. It's her version of a mental health day. In 2018, she invited Meghan. That was a real gesture. This wasn't obligated attendance at a state function. Kate chose to bring Meghan into her favorite annual ritual as an act of goodwill. But the body language in the photographs read like anything but a relaxed afternoon between women who were warming to each other. Kate looked strained in a way she never looked at Wimbledon. Stiff. The commentator noted she looked like she knew she was going to be photographed and was trying to perform enjoyment while producing something closer to endurance. And then there was the handbag. She was really gripping her handbag, the description read, as if it's some sort of shield to protect her. Not holding it, gripping it, like it was the one neutral object in the frame that wasn't watching her back. Tom Bauer's book noted that beside the taller, authoritative future queen, Meghan appeared somehow diminished. Meghan's smile, meanwhile, looked more forced than usual. So here's the picture. Kate at her favorite place in the world, shielding herself with her handbag, unable to relax at an event she'd been attending comfortably for years. And Meghan beside her, smiling harder than the occasion required, neither of them able to sell the version of this afternoon that their press teams needed the public to accept. Kate tried the following summer too. She brought her sister Pippa, the Pippa buffer.
Catherine very magnanimously extended the invitation again to Meghan to join her at the tennis. But this year she brought her sister Pippa along, perhaps as a buffer. Remember, this is Catherine's favourite event of the year. But once again, her body language suggests that it's anything but. She's stiff and uncomfortable as she arrives, as though this is purely duty, not pleasure. And you can only wonder if that's the prospect of spending the day with someone who makes her feel uncomfortable. Look at the expression on Catherine's face. She looks very strained. And she's really, gripping her handbag as if it's some sort of shield to protect her. It does not look like a relaxed afternoon enjoying the tennis at all, but very much like an engagement that she has to carry out because it's her duty.
1 year later, another Wimbledon invitation. Same venue, same charitable intention, completely different read. Because this time, Kate brought her sister along. The commentary noted the timing pointedly, perhaps as a buffer. That reframe changes everything about what the invitation meant. The first Wimbledon was Kate genuinely extending a hand. The second Wimbledon was Kate fulfilling a duty she'd apparently accepted was going to be uncomfortable and managing it by bringing someone to stand between them. The body language confirmed it. She arrived stiff, gripping the handbag again. Her posture had that particular quality that belonged to obligation, not enjoyment. The commentator was direct. She looked as though this is purely duty, not pleasure. For anyone who'd watched Kate at Wimbledon any other year, the contrast was hard to miss. She'd turned her safe space into an annual performance of warmth she didn't feel towards someone who made her uncomfortable. Twice. With increasingly obvious management strategies the second time around. Pippa had a perfectly good reason to be there, and everybody watching knew the real reason she was there. By this point, the pretense of genuine friendship had quietly been set aside. What remained was a series of obligations they were both going to honor because the institution required it, managed with whatever scaffolding made those obligations survivable. The following year didn't have the tennis as cover, just a church, a procession, and people they couldn't pretend to avoid, the grab that wasn't a hug.
The Commonwealth Day service was particularly important to the late Queen Elizabeth, and all the royals would know to be on their best behaviour. It might also be why this was chosen as another day when Catherine wanted to try to make things up. We see the pair kiss on both cheeks at the start of the event. Vanity Fair revealed that a palace source said this was deliberate. Catherine wanted to end months of rumours of a feud. And we can see in this embrace, it's pretty awkward. We've got Catherine kissing Meghan on both cheeks, and Meghan sort of putting her arm around as if she wants to embrace Catherine. But look at that, it's not really being reciprocated. It's not really an embrace. It's a sort of awkward grab almost. I think as public shows displays of affection go, it's not the most convincing.
Commonwealth Day 2019 was a deliberate strategic operation. Vanity Fair reported that a palace source confirmed it explicitly. Kate wanted to end months of feud rumors. She chose this moment, this event, this camera opportunity to demonstrate publicly that the women were fine. And so she kissed Meghan on both cheeks when they arrived. In public, on camera, right where everyone could see it. The footage didn't land the way the PR team needed it to. Kate leaned in and executed the double cheek kiss. Her part, performed, and Meghan's response was to put her arm around Kate in what the commentator described as something that wasn't quite an embrace. The arm was there. The warmth wasn't. Not reciprocated. Not returned. An awkward grab almost. That's worth sitting with. Kate showed up, planned the gesture, executed it in front of every lens pointed at them, did the full work of a person trying to publicly bury a narrative. And the resulting photograph still looked like two acquaintances who'd been asked to pose for a photo and hadn't quite figured out how to stand. This was also the last public engagement before baby Archie was born, before the households formally split, before Harry and Meghan moved their operation away from Kensington Palace and began establishing what was quietly being understood as a separate court. Kate had attempted a peace gesture on their way out the door. The resulting image was a hug that wasn't quite a hug, a smile that didn't reach anyone's eyes, and a freeze frame of two women already moving in different directions. The household split. The polo match was next. And after that, there wasn't even a gesture left to analyze. The baby shield.
The whole set of photographs that I saw, there's no interaction whatsoever between the two women. I mean, Meghan is clutching baby Archie to her chest almost as a sort of shield. Catherine is looking in a different direction the entire time, keeping an eye on her own children, no doubt. But even though the pictures were taken over the course of, quite a period, there's no engagement between the women at all. And it's worth remembering the context of the photograph as well, that by this time, the two households had split.
The Guards Club polo match in Windsor Great Park was framed as a relaxed charity afternoon. William and Harry were both playing. Baby Archie had just arrived. The press narrative was already building towards something that looked like cordial family normalcy, and this event was meant to feed that narrative. Instead, it produced one of the most talked about sets of photographs in this entire chapter of royal history. Across an entire collection of images, taken over an extended period at the same event, there was not one photograph showing Kate and Meghan making eye contact. Not mid-conversation, not glancing at each other. Nothing. Meghan held Archie to her chest. The commentator's description was precise. Almost as a sort of shield, not nestled comfortably, clutched. Kate looked in the opposite direction for the duration. She was watching her own children, yes, but the point wasn't that she was distracted. It was that across the full length of this event, in all of those photographs, the two women might as well have been strangers who happened to be standing near each other. And this is where the context becomes particularly sharp. These were women whose professional function inside the institution was to make anyone comfortable, to find something to say to anyone, to produce warmth on demand as a baseline job requirement. Here, at a private family event, they had nothing. Finding Freedom, which took a decidedly pro-Sussex line on all of this, described their dynamic at this time as a cordial but distant rapport. Harry, who genuinely loved polo, was photographed walking away looking annoyed. The whole afternoon was one for everyone involved to quietly file away and forget. The human wall.
We can see how Prince Edward and his wife Sophie, were almost acting as a buffer between the two couples. Here we have Edward and Sophie, chatting in a friendly way to William and Catherine in front of them. But Harry and Meghan, again seated on the row behind, look very uncomfortable. They're not engaging at all. And my goodness, look at that stiff expression on Meghan's face. It's as if, she's got that stiff jaw. She's sort of thinking, I've got to get through this. And Harry sort of giving her concerned glances. Are you okay, Meghan? It seems like it really was a day that they just wanted to grin and bear.
Commonwealth Day 2020 had a backstory before anyone arrived. The order of service had been written, printed, and distributed to 2,000 guests. Harry and Meghan's names were absent from the Queen's procession, completely omitted. By the time Harry learned about it, every copy had already been printed. He was reportedly furious. William agreed to skip the procession too, to avoid making the exclusion a visual spectacle rather than a footnote. So the four of them arrived into this context, already charged, already loaded, and sat down to perform composure for the cameras one final time as working royals. Except this time, Prince Edward and Sophie were positioned between the two couples in a way that read as anything but accidental. There they were, chatting warmly with William and Kate in front, occupying exactly the amount of physical space needed to prevent the two women from being placed adjacent. Meghan's jaw was set, the kind of expression that telegraphs sustained effort rather than genuine neutrality. Harry glanced at her sideways repeatedly with what someone described simply as, "Are you okay?" energy. Kate, meanwhile, had Edward and Sophie, and she needed them. This was the last time the four of them appeared together as working royals, and the final image of that era was two couples separated by the institutional equivalent of a dividing wall, both sides managing their way through 60 minutes they couldn't shorten. Harry and Meghan announced their exit shortly after. The next time the cameras caught Kate and Meghan in the same frame, the palace was in crisis. The hardest walk.
Given that the brothers were born royal, you might have expected them to be on the outside, nearest the crowd. Plus, knowing that the brothers had fallen out so spectacularly, you might have thought that it would be the wives who were next to each other. But the opposite is true. The brothers share a couple of words, but Catherine wants to be physically separate from Meghan. At the first opportunity, the two couples split to go and talk to different sections of the crowd, where some even booed the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Robert Jobson revealed in his book Our King that despite the show of unity and the hint of reconciliation that it gave to optimistic royal watchers, this was just an illusion. He said the occasion was very difficult for a visibly uncomfortable Meghan. He also revealed that it was worse for Catherine. Catherine later admitted to a senior royal that such was the ill feeling between the two couples, the joint walkabout was one of the hardest things she'd ever had to do.
Queen Elizabeth died on September 8, 2022. Harry's book hadn't been published yet. The Oprah interview was 18 months behind them, and when William and Harry stepped outside Windsor Castle with their wives to meet the crowd of mourners, the world read it as something close to a reconciliation. The optics were undeniable. The four of them, together, grief making the politics irrelevant for one afternoon. But Robert Jobson's book revealed what was actually happening inside that formation. Kate wanted to separate from Meghan at the first opportunity. The couples split almost immediately, walking different sections of the crowd. Some people in those crowds booed the Sussexes as they moved through. And then the detail that Jobson reported, sourced directly. Kate later admitted to a senior royal that the joint walkabout was one of the hardest things she'd ever had to do. Not difficult, not uncomfortable. One of the hardest things she'd ever done. This was a woman who'd navigated the death of a monarch, her husband's grief, the weight of inherited titles and reconfigured roles, all in front of the full force of global media attention. And standing next to Meghan Markle for 20 minutes of a public walkabout during a national period of mourning ranked alongside it. Days later at the funeral, Camilla was positioned between them. The commentator's observation was understated. The body language is striking. Meghan has said a lot across a lot of platforms about what it felt like to be in that family. Kate has said nothing. Not publicly, she probably never will. But what do you think? Which of these Kate and Meghan moments truly cemented the fallout for you? Drop your takes in the comments below, and if you haven't subscribed to the Star Report yet, the button is right there. What are you waiting for?